Yes, I was asked to contribute to this seminar to talk about the French case. It has to do with my research in the sense that I do some research on social work in France, obviously, but I'm afraid my presentation is going to feel a bit dry after all the richness of the presentations you have been seeing before, because it's not the result of a research that I'm presenting, it's just the system, how it is in France. And it feels very much like a situation of war. So it is what we live, and when I say we, there is also my colleague from France who is here today, and who is Anna Rucker, who does research with me in Nanterre, also on social work. So I'm not the only one in this case. And it's true that very often we feel, as researchers in social work or on social work, we feel very insecure, and we feel like we have to defend ourselves. So this is what it's about. So the first question is, in France, who does research on social work? There are different institutions, we would say, where research is done, and these institutions have, in the system, they have nothing to do with each other. They are absolutely disconnected from each other. So the first I talk about is university, because it's where I belong to. It's not because it's the main one or anything. But there are also schools for social work, and they are completely apart from the university. I will talk about that. And then we have a range of observatories, which again are not focused on social work. They are focused on specific issues and populations. So the universities, I tried to make a small number of slides. So I'm going to talk a lot on each slide. Universities have a specific problem, if we talk about social work, is that social work in France is not recognized as a scientific discipline, as a scientific field, which means that we don't have any, first you can't promote in social work, you can't do a PhD in social work, for example. You can't be a professor of social work, not in university. So people who do research on social work in universities are actually based in sociology or psychology or education, which is our case, or health, quite often, sometimes law, things like that. And they are not identifying themselves with the discipline of social work. There are no journals of social work that are recognized as scientific journals where we could publish, for example. So we have to publish in education journals or in sociological journals and so on. So this has implications on how we do research and also how we communicate about the researchers. But what is true anyway is that inside the universities, for the last 20 years and more now, we do have, we do offer bachelors and masters in social work, or linked to social work. So it's not called bachelor in social work, but then it would be a bachelor for work with vulnerable people, for example, or things like that. And then it gathers, very often it gathers different disciplines together. So that's the universities. So you see that obviously people who do research, they will try and open a BA or a MA in social work, or for people who want to do social work. So that's also our case. We have a little bit of a master's, which is designed for social workers. But we are competing very much with schools for social work. These schools are private organizations. They are from the non-for-profit sector, so they're not making profit on students, but still they're living from the students. So they are not linked with universities in any way. This is how it has been historically constructed since the 60s, and they have the monopoly. Would you say that?
Monopoly.
The monopoly on social work training. So you can't be a social worker. You can't work as a social worker if you haven't got a degree from these schools. So you can say, in a way, they have the students, we have the scientific legitimacy, because that's what they don't have. And trainers in the social work, in the schools for social workers, they more and more often have a PhD, but it's not a requirement. The requirement is to be a social worker yourself. They are now setting up research centers in social work in these schools, although they don't have the legitimacy. They're trying to do it in order to open masters, because if you want to have a master, you need to have a research center. So you can see that we are competing with them in many ways. And there are also these observatories which work on different topics like poverty, children at risk, etc. And they appoint not only researchers, but mostly representative of ministries, public institutions, investigators, and so on. The researchers are the last ones on the list in these national observatories. So how does research then feed into practice? There is the training mainly and the policy. The training happens obviously mainly in the schools where there is no research, so the initial training. Then it happens in universities, but that is only if you want to do a master's, or if you want to go on, or if you want to do something which is linked with social work, but you won't have the actual degree in social work. Policy is mainly informed by the observatories, which are designed to be informing policy. And so the researchers like us, we are sometimes asked to do, we do bids for these observatories, so we are commissioned, but we're not directly informing the research, the policies, sorry. Then there is another way, which I didn't write here, but of course practice is informed when the practitioners participate in the research. Then this is a way of having an exchange, and I would say that is the most effective way, because then you can think together with them, and they can inform us and we inform them at the same time. So there is something happening there. This is, thank you. So this is a very precarious way of probably of feeding into practice, because it's not systematic at all. Why I'm talking about the war is because there is a kind of war between schools and universities, the weapons being the students on the one hand, so schools have the students, university have scientific recognition, but the problem is then that you don't, well, this, as you can see, this is not very efficient, and we lose a lot of time on this stupid war. But on the other hand, there are many examples of local cooperation between school and universities, and again, that is our case. We have lots of cooperation with several schools, so their students come to our place, they get university degree at the same time as social work degree. And now, at the moment, there are negotiations at the national level, so social work schools and university will have to cooperate, whether they want it or not. So that's good news in a way. But the result of all this is that researchers on social work have to seek legitimacy in other scientific areas, so we can't really put our research on the front, because we will try and make it look like educational research or sociological research instead of research in social work, which is a pity. It also means that there is a big gap between researchers and practitioners, because practitioners who have been trained in social work schools, they are not familiar at all with research, obviously. Which means that they don't really understand the logic and the point. I'm finished. Thank you.